We've been warning you for months about ICE, but wait till you hear this. Back in May, the ICE attorneys started telling frontline officers that they don't need a judicial warrant to enter someone's home to arrest them, despite the fact that the Fourth Amendment clearly requires a judicial warrant, a warrant signed by a neutral judge to say, yes, you have probable cause and you can go into that person's house to grab someone. They say that their BS administrative warrants allow them to bust into people's houses and to drag them out into the cold like we just saw in Minnesota. I can't tell you how illegal this is. I can't tell you how contrary to the Constitution this is. You all need to wake up and pay attention to what they're doing, because if they can do this to immigrants, they can do it to any of us.
ICE agents are being instructed by a new policy to force their way into American homes even without a judicial warrant. The next stage may have begun. This is going to be a slightly longer video, but I need you to listen to me. This is the document I'm talking about. It says that an internal memo from May 2025 from DHS and ICE authorizes ICE agents to enter American homes without consent, exigent circumstances, or a judicial warrant, which is the basic standard for the Fourth Amendment. The memo authorizes agents to use whatever force is necessary to enter a home with just an administrative warrant. The memo contains only two limits to these sweeping new powers, and those are the entering of third-party homes, which cannot be accessed using force, and the need for an I-205, which is an administrative warrant that contains a final order of removal. What does that mean? That if the content of the memo is confirmed, the government would be now openly violating the Fourth Amendment rights by allowing federal agents to force their way into a home based on an order issued by the same agency that employs those federal agents. And I'm preparing a Substack deep dive that explains more in detail the content of the memo, the constitutional implications, and how this policy ignores almost 100 years of Supreme Court decisions. But I want to point out two things that I think are very important in this video. Number one, this memo was addressed to all ICE personnel, but for some reason was not distributed and was only briefly shown to individuals who then trained their agency on this policy. Why is that? Well, in my opinion, because no documentation means plausible deniability and avoids something that can become a discoverable record in any future litigation. The federal government knew that this memo was a constitutional liability, in my opinion, but wanted to apply it first and minimize the fallout later. Number two, this policy is being deployed in the Fifth Circuit only, and this to me is very, very important because this is the court system that includes Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and it's a federal court system that is notoriously tolerant of heavy-handed law enforcement tactics. I suspect the plan here is for the government to try to get a couple of favorable decisions as people take the federal government to court after their front door gets broken down.
An internal immigration and customs enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press shows ICE officials told officers and agents they can forcibly enter homes of people subject to deportation without warrants signed by judges. Now, the memo from acting ICE Director Todd Lyons, shared by whistleblowers with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, is dated May 12th. It authorizes agents to forcibly enter homes using only an administrative warrant instead of a warrant from a judge when a person has a final order of removal. This reflects, of course, a major departure from the longstanding practice of requiring judge-signed warrants to enter homes. It also is a clear Fourth Amendment violation. What do you make of this memo, and is it a violation of the law?
Yeah, Mika, good morning. This is incredible and important reporting by the AP's Rebecca Santana. And she says in the story that the AP doesn't really know, no one knows to what extent they've actually used this memo and acted on this memo, but they documented at least one case where they said they saw ICE officers break into the home of a Liberian immigrant and drag him out, and then they later learned that that was based only on an administrative warrant. Look, let's be real here. MAGA Republicans and many Donald Trump supporters are angry and annoyed that there are so many people running around the United States who have final orders of removal. Illegal immigrants, immigrants in the country illegally, who should be deported, and ICE is trying to find them, and they can't find them, and it's a really difficult administrative problem, and it's existed for years. But that doesn't trump the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. No matter whether they have an order of removal, an administrative warrant, the Fourth Amendment applies to all persons in the United States, not just American citizens. And there's a long litany of Supreme Court decisions and other case law that suggests that the Fourth Amendment applies in all of these contexts. There's no such thing as an administrative warrant that allows law enforcement officers to break into a home without approval of a judge because people are supposed to be secure in their persons and papers. That's a fundamental precept of the Constitution. And the other really telling thing about the story, you alluded to this, is that she reports that the memo is not in wide circulation. In fact, the security around it is really telling. They're not letting people keep copies of it. They're letting people read it and then they're taking it back. And somehow these whistleblowers managed to obtain a copy and slip it to a senator.